The keep of Lord Manfred rose above the pine-dark valley, like a stone fist. Behind its curtain wall, the stables smelled of iron and old victories. There in the farthest stall, the warhorse Eben waited, head low, eyes milked over by a white mist that no ointment could lift. Once he had carried his master's colors through the mountain passes, faster than river water in spring. Now the groom's lantern showed only a tall scarred shadow that trembled when the wind shifted. At dawn, when the first bells of the hamlet tolled, Lord Manfred walked the aisle of straw. He paused, counted the cost of oats and hay against a beast that could no longer see the road, and made his reckoning. Without a word, 2 grooms followed, ropes already knotted. Abjar felt the hemp brush his flank and lifted his head, nostrils flaring for the hand that once quieted thunder in his blood. The hand did not come. Instead, the ropes tightened, the stable door creaked, and the horse was led away through a postern gate. None but condemned things ever passed. Beyond the last plowed field, the forest opened its black mouth. There the men loosed the ropes, coiled them again, and left him. No command, no blow, only the creak of their retreating boots, and the hush of trees closing behind them. Abjar stood alone. The sun climbed, a pale coin behind ash-gray clouds. He circled the same few yards, hoofs scuffing last year's leaves, ears turning for the jingle of harness, or the whistle he knew meant water. Nothing answered, but the cold sap scent of birch, and the slow drip of his own breath. Hunger came, then thirst, then a greater hollow memory. He lowered his blind head to the earth, searching for the faintest thread of homeward track, but the world had been rubbed out. Still he waited, because loyalty is a harder chain to break than rope, and the heart that once carried a lord through fire does not quickly learn betrayal. A crow settled on a fallen fir. It watched the horse. The horse watched nothing. Between them the afternoon thinned, and the forest kept its silence. Like a secret it had no intention of returning. Elias the woodcutter came down the mountain path at dusk, his back bent under a meager faggot of pine. 40 winters had carved their furrows across his sun-browned face. The same winters had taught him to walk softly when the forest grew quiet. His pouch held nothing but crumbs of black bread. His mind held pictures of children who would ask for supper, and of Mila, his wife, who would smile even when the pot showed only steam. Where the track skirted the wolf briars, he saw what he first took for a fallen trunk. It stirred. Elias set down his bundle and stepped closer. A horse, gaunt black as charred wood, stood between 2 birches, head lowered, eyes veiled with the same white frost that coats January ponds. Every rib showed, sharp as the blade Elias used to strip bark. Yet the curve of the neck still spoke of old pride, and the nostrils still flared, as though remembering trumpets. Elias's hand rose of its own accord when his cracked fingers touched the hollow above the horse's collarbone. The beast shuddered once, then leaned the weight of its skull against the woodcutter's shoulder. A sigh traveled through the thin body. Elias felt it settle against his own heart, like a debt he had not known he owed. He uncorked his wooden flask. 1 mouthful remained, his own drink for the road home. He poured it into his palm. The blind lips searched, found, drew the water in. A small sound, half-grown, half-full snicker, rose from the hollow chest. Elias rested his forehead against the damp muzzle. Around them the forest darkened, but the space between man and horse grew strangely bright, as though some buried lantern had been uncovered. He knew the reckoning. 1 more hungry mouth against 3 already hungry ones. Yet the bundle on the ground seemed suddenly lighter, as if the sticks themselves had decided to carry the next burden. Elias looped his rope into a halter, whispered no word of command, and turned homeward. The blind stallion followed, step for step, trusting the scent of pine sap and honest sweat more than any rain. Elias took the same weather-stiffened cord. He used to bind faggots, slipped it gently round the stallion's neck, and set off. Step for step they descended the stony track, man limping, horse groping, both uncertain as saplings in a late storm. Whenever the black forehoofs faltered, Elias paused, laid a work-scarred hand between the twitching ears, and waited until the tremor passed. No whip, no curse, only the soft hush of pine needles. Under their shared weight, the hamlet, 2 rows of daub and wattle huts, lay in the fold of the hill. Smoke rose thin as sighs from the roofs. Behind each doorway a face appeared, pale in the dusk. No voice called, yet Elias felt the question strike his back, like sleet. He kept his gaze on the ridge of his own roof, thatched last winter and already green with moss. The horse followed the scent of that moss, as though it were bread. Mila stood in the doorway, a patched shawl round her shoulders, the youngest child clinging to her knee. Her eyes, gray as river stones, moved from the stallion's milky gaze to her husband's face, and found there the same steady flame she had followed since their first season together. Without speech she drew aside. The horse stepped into the croft, hooves ringing once against the threshold stone. She spread the single armful of straw, meant for their mattress. The children laid their crusts on the sill. That night the family supped on cold water, and the smell of pine, yet the hut felt smaller and warmer, as though some unseen brazier had been kindled. Days slid by like meltwater. Elias split his own ration, half for the children, half for the blind guest. At dusk he carried pails from the spring, sluicing the gaunt flanks, until the black hide took on the sheen of wet slate. Poultices of wild comfrey drew the heat from old kicks. The ribs ceased to show like barrel staves. Still the eyes remained clouded, mirrors that reflected nothing. Then came the first morning, when frost whitened the split logs. Elias lifted his axe, meaning to walk the familiar copse. Abjar lifted his great head, struck the earth once twice, and caught the sleeve of the wool coat between his teeth. The cloth tore slightly. The horse tugged, insistent as a child leading his father to a hidden nest. Elias frowned, set the axe aside, and let himself be drawn. Blind, the stallion chose a path no man had cut, northward, where the pines grew so thick. Their needles muffled every footfall. Elias's breath smote. The horse's ears swiveled like compass needles, guiding them deeper into a silence older than any road. Each new dawn, the black stallion angled his ears toward the same quarter of the sky, and each morning Elias yielded a little further. At last, on a frost-white morning, when the village wells were still veiled in mist, he knotted the rope, murmured, "So be it," and let the horse choose the pace. They left the last furrowed field behind. The stallion did not stumble once. He moved as though some buried map lay inked beneath his hooves. Northeast he took them, into the old forest where even charcoal burners feared to linger, onto a ridge path choked with fallen spruce. In silence, Elias's boots found purchase on wet stone. The horse's stride never faltered. Only the creak of leather and the hush of his own breathing kept the woodcutter company. By midday the trees thinned to scrub. Then even the scrub surrendered to open heath. Heather gave way to shale, shale to a wide bowl of dunes. The shepherds called the gray thirst. No track, no well, no bird crossed that place. Elias's tongue clove to the roof of his mouth. The flask at his belt held 3 lukewarm swallows. He thought of turning back. The stallion planted his forehooves, stretched his neck toward a line of heat shimmer on the horizon, and neighed, a single note that rang against the sky, like an iron bell. Elias wiped salt from his eyes. Before him the dunes rolled like frozen waves, each crest burning white. Yet the horse would not retreat. He struck the sand once, twice, sending up small golden geysers, and stood waiting, blind but certain. The wind carried the scent of nothing, yet something tugged at the woodcutter's chest. As surely as the rope in his hand, he shifted the axe on his shoulder, swallowed the last mouthful of water, and stepped forward. The stallion followed, ears pricked, as though the buried needle of memory had at last found the seam of a secret, buried deeper than thirst. Elias's skin prickled, as though the wind itself had changed its mind. He looked into the milk-filmed eyes, and saw not emptiness, but a certainty older than sight. The rope became a pact. Man and horse stepped onto the fong-dark stones. The dunes fell away. A field of black shale snapped at their soles, sharp, toothy slabs that had never known a plow. Ravines cut the ground like old sword scars. Yet the stallion never hesitated. He wove left, right, threading cracks Elias did not see, until the last stride, memory it seemed, lay stored in the hoofs themselves. At the foot of two leaning crags, the path narrowed to a slit, no wider than a cart gate. Cold exhaled from the cleft, carrying the smell of buried iron. Elias's heart knocked once against his ribs. The stallion lowered his head and entered, drawing the man after him, into a throat of shadow. The walls pressed so close, Elias felt their breath. Then the rock opened, like a fist unclenching. They stood in a hidden valley, ringed by cliffs, a silent chamber roofed with sky. Wind had swept the floor clean, except for a single mound, hunched against a hawk-shaped spur of stone. There lay splinters of cedar, green corroded clasps, and bones picked white by decades of sun. Old tales drifted back to Elias, a merchant prince who trusted no living map, who let his horse remember the detour that avoided both robbers and taxmen. That same prince had later turned the beast out to die, preferring gold to gratitude. The stallion crossed to the mound, sniffed, and began to paw. Sand flew in coppery sheets. Elias knelt, hands moving in time with the hooves. The earth yielded, grain by grain, until wood met his knuckles. Planks bound with bronze strips now blossomed in verdigris. A coffin-shaped chest, man-long, shoulder-deep. The horse stilled. He pressed his nostrils to the seam and exhaled, a long, slow breath that sounded like the closing of an account. In that instant Elias understood. The living vault had returned the treasure to the only keeper left, who would not clutch it for himself. Elias's breath froze against the stone. Through the crack he watched the riders spill into the valley, like black syrup. 6-7. Hard men on blown horses, their cloaks powdered with desert dust. At their head rode Shaddad, the merchant's taciturn butcher, a man whose smile began only when another's ended. They reined in beside the half-uncovered chest. One glance at the green bronze bands and the digger's footprints, and talk died. Shaddad dismounted, knelt, traced the embossed crest of House Manfred with a fingertip, then drove his dagger under the lid. Wood groaned, coins glittered, a slow, deliberate wink of gold. The men forgot thirst, forgot orders, forgot even the name of the fool who had led them here. They fell upon the mound, like wolves upon a winter carcass, claws of steel and bare flesh, flinging sand aside. Elias felt the horse tremble, yet Abjar remained stone still, nostrils clamped, as though he too understood that a single snort could summon death. The crack in the rock was narrow, moonshadow and trickling grit hid them. Still Elias pressed his forehead to the warm neck and counted heartbeats instead of breaths. More wood splintered. A second chest surfaced, then a third. Coffers stacked like bricks in a forgotten kiln. Shaddad's men laughed, a brittle sound that bounced off the cliffs. One pulled a saddlebag, another slit the stitches and shook it empty, eager to swallow the weight of empires. No one kept watch. Gold had become their sentinel and their trap. Elias stood on the moonlit lip of the ridge, the stallion's ribs heaving against his thigh. Below, the thieves' fire fluttered, like a wounded bird, its light painting their frantic shadows. Across the sand-sealed chests, every grunt, every oath that rose on the night air, was a stone dropped into the well of his memory. Echoes of every hunger pang, every turn back, every mocking glance his children had swallowed. He loosened the rope from the horse's neck and knotted it instead around his own wrist, a single loop of trust. Then he drew the axe from his belt. The blade was dulled by years of splitting pine, but the edge still caught a silver thread of moon. "Wait!" He breathed into the stallion's ear. The animal lowered his head, ears swiveling like twin doors, closing on the world below. Elias crouched on the lip of rock, fingers curled around a fist-sized stone. Below, the sleepers lay like dolls, beneath a shelf poised to topple. He drew back his arm, not to kill, but to wake. The rock rang off the opposite cliff. The shout that followed cracked the night wide open. "Stone walks! Run!" The men lurched up, blades half-drawn, just as the cliff face gave its verdict. With a sigh that turned to a roar, the hawk-shaped spur leaned, slid, and thundered down. Sand and smaller rocks rode the avalanche, like cheering children. No sword, no oath, no greed slowed the fall. It swept the fire away, buried the chests to their lids, and stopped an arm's length from the cowering thieves. Terror did the rest. They fled, boots abandoned, lanterns flung aside, vanishing into the dark, with nothing but the echo of their own panic. When the dust settled, moonlight poured clean again over a changed world. Elias picked his way down. The great boulder had split the largest coffer, not crushed it. Within, gold lay tumbled like autumn leaves, and there, folded among them, a leather packet sealed with the merchant's own sigil, proof of caravans taxed to nothing, of bribes, of blood. He took only what a man could carry without bending: 2 purses of coin, a chain fine enough to buy seed corn, and the packet, evidence heavier than iron. The rest he left to the sand, which had already begun its patient work of reburial. At the foot of the ridge, the stallion waited, ears pricked toward the sound of Elias's return. When the woodcutter pressed his lips to the broad forehead, the horse answered with a low nicker, soft, certain, the sound of honor restored. They walked away shoulder to shoulder, no rope between them now. Behind, the valley kept its gold and its ghosts. Ahead, the first pale streak of dawn fingered the eastern pines. Elias did not look back. In his pouch clinked enough to buy bread. In his hand rested proof to serve a purpose, and at his side walked the only treasure that had never been lost: memory that chose to serve instead of rule. At sunrise, Elias rode into the town square, not shuffling behind a faggot, but upright on the black stallion, newly bridled in plain leather that gleamed like honesty itself. Folk left their booths and baking ovens to stare. The same gaunt woodcutter who had limped away with a blind beast now returned looking like quiet thunder. He reined in beneath the marble platform, where Lord Manfred sat counting bags of tariff silver. Without bow, Elias loosened a purse and spilled 10 gold coins across the white stone. They rang like small bells, then stilled. Beside them he laid the sealed packet, the merchant's seal. Cracked wax, lion-devouring sun, glowered up at its master. Manfred's face drained to clay. His lips moved but no voice came, for there, behind the stranger's shoulder, stood the warhorse he had discarded, ribs filled, coat burnished, blind eyes fixed on some distant horizon. Only he could see. Around the square the murmuring rose and fell like a tide. The horse that remembers. The horse that returned. Elias spoke no accusation. He told the tale simply. How a creature once cast aside had carried a man to the buried sum of another's treachery, and how that man had carried back only what conscience could hold. When he finished, the crowd parted as if a hot iron had been drawn through cloth. Manfred's gloved hand hovered over the gold, yet dared not close. The coins reflected his trembling fingers, like a mockery of grasping. Whispers turned to jeers, and eyes that had once bowed now stared with open scorn, stripping the lord of his borrowed dignity. In the light of day, the woodcutter turned away. He left the money where it lay, ransom for no one, witness for everyone. With the stallion he walked the length of the square, past bakeries and forges, until the clack of hooves faded, toward the river road. Weeks later a new roof rose on the eastern hill. Broad beams, a stable larger than the cottage itself. Fields were cleared, a well sunk, and beside the gate a modest hospice, where gray heads and lame dogs found porridge and a place by the hearth. Children running errands sometimes paused at the paddock rail. Inside, the black horse grazed unhurried, ears swiveling toward every footfall, as though each were a question he might choose to answer. Seasons turned, and the stallion's muzzle silvered. One spring dawn he lowered himself beneath the apple he had long used as a scratching post, sighed once, and was still. Elias wrapped the body in linen, woven by the same hands that had once patched his children's shirts, and laid it in the orchard. Over the mound he set no stone lion, no boastful scroll, only a plain slate carved with the words, "Here lies the one who taught me, that eyes may lose the way, but a loyal heart never does." Men still point out the grave, when strangers ask whose garden prospers so green. The tale is told without flourish, for the orchard itself speaks, fruit offered freely to any hungry passerby, water drawn for the weary, silence given to those who have no voice left. And if at twilight you see an old woodcutter walking between the trees, staff tapping softly, folks say he is listening for the echo of hooves that guided him out of darkness. Proof that the richest coin ever minted is the one stamped with mercy, and the only purse that never empties is the heart that refuses to cast the helpless aside.